Gaza was the place where the Anakim, the descendants of the Nephilim, were never defeated. That's important. One of the most painful and traumatic days in history, in modern Jewish history, is October 7th. It's a day that's going to go down in infamy. I just want you to get deeper into the spiritual roots of this conflict. We know that October 7th was perpetrated by Hamas, that the location was Gaza, and I think it's important that we need to understand Gaza biblically and spiritually, because many people claim that the Jewish people are colonialists. They're colonizers with no historical connection to the land. But this is an absolute lie. The Jewish people have been in Gaza since the days of Abraham. The Torah tells us, the book of Genesis 20 verse 1, that Abraham went and dwelt in Gerar. Gerar is a city in Gaza. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar like his father during a time of famine. Isaac wanted to go down to Egypt, but God told him to stay in Gerar. He sowed in a year of famine. He reaped 100-fold. There was a blessing on that place. And amazingly, this blows my mind. The Lord reaffirms his covenant with Isaac and the Jewish people in Gaza. Genesis 26, 23 to 25. But he went up from there, and Adonai appeared to him that night and said, I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid. I am with you, and I will bless you. Multiply your seed for the sake of Abraham, my servant. So he built there an altar and called on the name of Adonai. Wow. God reaffirms his covenant in the area of Gaza with Yitzchak, with Isaac. Why? Because God knows the end from the beginning. And he knew all these generations later, there were going to come along those who said Gaza was never part of what God promised to the Jewish people, that we're just Johnny-come-latelys. It is not true. Going back thousands and thousands of years, it is in there in the scripture. But there's an important and an interesting spiritual side. I want to go deeper now, because yes, there is a historic connection. Yes, the patriarchs, Abraham and Isaac, are connected to Gaza, but there's a deep spiritual insight, a deep spiritual background that we have to understand to really get our minds around what is happening there today. So God promises the land, the promised land, the land of Canaan, which included Gaza, to the Bnei Israel, to the children of Israel. So after coming out of Egypt, okay, God tells the children of Israel to go in and take the land. Well, they didn't. They had fear. But then eventually Joshua and the children of Israel do go in to possess the land. Listen to Joshua 11:21 through 23. At that time, Joshua went up and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, Debir, Anav, and from the entire hill country of Judah, and from the entire hill country of Israel. Joshua, in Hebrew, Yehoshua, put a ban on them and their cities. There was none of the Anakim left in the land of the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, except some were left in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. Okay, so they wiped out the Anakim, but in 3 places, all cities of Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. The Gaza is today Gaza, okay, around Gaza. Those are the 3 places they didn't wipe out the Anakim. These were all towns of the Philistines. Why is this important? Modern day Palestinians took their name from the Philistines. In Hebrew, they're not called the Palestinians. They're actually called the Philistines. That's what they chose to call themselves. They were trying to make a historic connection to the land, saying they were the ancient people that dwelt there. But the reality is, and I don't want to go too deep into this, the first time the Arab people who were living in the land referred to themselves as Palestinians were 1920s, or we should say Philistines, okay? But notice this is the point. In Gaza, the Anakim were not killed. But who were the Anakim? The word Anakim comes from the word Anak, which means neck, or in a sense tall. They had really long necks. They were really tall. It's alluding to their size. But listen to what Numbers 13:30 through 33 says. This is really important. This is after the children of Israel had left Egypt. God tells them to go in and possess the land. God sends the 12 spies in, the two most famous spies, Joshua and Caleb, the good spies. But there were 10 spies who brought a negative report about the land that was promised to them, the promised land, that put fear in the hearts of the people, caused the people to weep and believe that they could not go in and possess the land. And it was because of that negative report and the disobedience and the disbelief of the people that whole generation had to die in the wilderness. But what was it that instilled fear in their hearts that caused them not to believe and obey? Numbers 13, verse 31. But when the men had gone up with him, said, we cannot attack these people because they are stronger than us. They spread among the Bnei Israel a bad report about the land they had explored, saying, the land through which we explored devours its residents. All the people we saw there were men of great size. We also saw there the Nephilim. They saw the Nephilim. Who are the Nephilim? It tells us the sons of Anak are from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in their eyes as well as theirs. Wow. Are you getting this? The Anakim, according to Numbers 13, are the descendants of the Nephilim. The Anakim were giants descended from the Nephilim that instilled fear in the hearts of the people. But who then are the Nephilim? Nephilim literally means the fallen ones. It comes from the Hebrew word nafal, which means to fall. Fallen from what? What does that mean? The fallen ones. It ties back to Genesis chapter 6, where the sons of God have relationships with the daughters of men. But the question is, who are the sons of God that have relationships with the daughters of men? One interpretation, and probably the most well-known and most widespread interpretation in the first century, was that the sons of God in the Bible can refer to angels. The book of Enoch, which is quoted briefly in the New Testament, quoted briefly in the New Testament, but was, a book that was very highly respected and known in the day, at least in part, believed that the angels fell from heaven and had relationships with the daughters of men. So these sons of God are fallen angels, hence the Nephilim, the fallen ones, because they fell from heaven. And where did they fall from heaven? In the north of Israel, Mount Hermon, which is, think about it, Israel is fighting a battle in the north where the angels, the Nephilim, fell, okay? And there is this battle in the south, the place where the Anakim, who are descendants of the Nephilim, could not be destroyed. And so the fallen angels manifested in physical form, had sexual relations with women, resulting in offspring that were kind of half human, half demons, or the offspring of that, okay? And that is what, in part, why God brought the flood on the earth, because the seed had been corrupted. What's interesting is that this seems to correspond to, we were just in Greece, come with us to Greece sometime. One of the things we learned about in Greece are the Greek gods. And as part of the Greek gods, there's something known as the Titans, a race of half human, half gods who lived upon the earth. Could these be what Genesis chapter 6 describes as the mighty men of renown, the mighty men of old? Could they be what other cultures refer to, like the Greek culture, as the Titans? What's also interesting is that in 2 Peter 2, we read this: "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood on the world of the ungodly." So Peter connects these angels and the flood in the days of Noah, 2 Peter 2:2. And then verses 4 and 5, what's interesting as well is that the word for hell there in the Greek is Tartarus, which is considered the deepest part of hell that is reserved for the fallen angels in Greek mythology, and that is reserved for the Titans. I'm not telling you 100% this is the definitive interpretation, but what I'm saying is it seems to be a strong possibility. I do tend to lean to the side that the Nephilim are fallen angels that cohabitated with earthly women and produced this race of what seem like superhuman beings known as the Nephilim, that were giants in size, okay? Now, we said earlier, again, Gaza in Hebrew means stronghold. We're going to see how this all ties together. It was the Philistine stronghold. It was a place that was controlled by the Philistines. But it was also, Gaza was the place, it's the place where the Nephilim, their descendants, the Anakim, were never defeated. Why is that important? Because the territorial spirit seems to have never been completely disposed or conquered. And that's significant. Joshua was not able to drive them out. It seems the book of Daniel, other places talk about like the prince of Persia, this angelic force that opposed the angel that God sent from heaven to Daniel. There are in the heavenly places angels assigned to nations, and they can try to, these demonic angels can try to oppose God's work. Obviously, they won't win in the end, but they try to oppose, okay? And so therefore, it should make sense spiritually why Gaza is the center of the attack and the place of greatest hostility in the land of Israel until this day, going back to the Philistines, going back to the Nephilim, going back to the sons of the Anakim. So there is a greater spiritual force behind this battle. The force is irrational and it is demonic. It is from the pit of hell. Even as we say, Hamas has the same numerical value of hell, Gehenna in Hebrew 108, and that is the only way to describe the attack on October 7th. It was from the pit of hell. It was a manifestation of hell, burning babies alive, cutting off people's body parts, torturing people. I mean, the acts were so horrific, so barbaric, so evil. It is a picture of what hell is like.